everyone, it's your girl Nuru. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for watching the videos that I've been posting so far. Please continue liking and sharing, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Okay, so today I'm going to tell you a short story. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a very rich merchant. Now, every so often, this merchant would travel to a faraway land to meet fellow merchants like himself to discuss about merchanty things. Every time he made such a journey, he would go with a long caravan. This caravan would include slaves, his animals, and some bits of treasure. And he always traveled with his trusted servant. Now, one day, it came the time for him to go on one of these journeys. He gathered all his belongings and, of course, his slaves and his treasure and his servants, and now they started on the caravan very early in the morning. Now, at the end of the day, when it was almost dusk, he asked his trusted slave to run ahead and scout for a place where they could settle down for the night and then continue the journey on the next day. And because he is very loyal to his master, the servant rushed ahead to scout for a place that they could rest for the night. Shortly later, he came back and he reported that he had seen a very good clearing where they could settle down and that would fit their whole entire caravan. Quickly, they all rushed there. Now, when they got to the clearing, the merchant noticed that there was a cottage at the very corner of this clearing. While the rest of his caravan was settling down, he decided to walk over to the cottage and introduce himself to the occupants. He knocked on the door. He was welcomed by a man, his wife, and a little boy. They were so accommodative and so welcoming. They offered to water their animals and also to share a meal with them. They were very happy. They shared stories that night. And the merchant kept on wondering how these people were so happy, despite the fact that they had very little at their disposal. So he asked the man of the house how he made his living. And the man offered and told him that they owned a cow, and the milk that this cow gave is what they used not only for sustenance, but also to sell at the local market. And the money which they earned from the milk that they sold is what they used to buy some of the supplies that they needed. Anyway, after this, they all retired for the night. And the next morning, they got up, the merchant went over to the man and his family and thanked them heartily for their hospitality, and they were off. A few miles away from the clearing and the cottage, the rich merchant asked his trusted slave to go back to the cottage, quietly steal their cow, and throw the cow over the cliff. Now you can imagine how flabbergasted this slave was, because he's wondering, but this family was so accommodative, they were so hospitable to us, they welcomed us and shared with us in the little that they had, and how cruel is my master to ask me to go and destroy the one thing that is giving them their living. But anyway, as I said earlier, this servant was very loyal, so he was like, okay, let me just go and do this, even if it's such a cruel order. So he went back, stealthily crept into the homestead, stole the cow. I don't know how he stole the cow without the cow mooing, by the way, but stole the cow and threw the cow over the cliff. This thing weighed so heavily in the slave's heart because he just felt like they had just taken away the only source of income for this peasant family that was already struggling. And it lived with him over the years because they went and had their meeting with the merchants, and life just continued. Days turned into months, months into years. A few years later, it came again, the time for them to make the same journey and to go for the same meeting. By this time, the rich merchant had even forgotten about everything that had happened in the past few years, what he did. And so they made their journey, and this trusted slave was very, very careful to note exactly where they had rested for the night. And so when they neared that clearing, he stole away from the caravan to go into the clearing and check out what had happened to the peasant family that had hosted them a few years back. And so when he got to the clearing, his heart immediately started pounding because he's like, oh my goodness, the house is not there. in place of the cottage, there was a mansion, and there was grass, there were flowers, there was some sort of a driveway leading up to the mansion. And he started shaking in his boots because he was so sure that these peasants who had hosted them all those years back just died of poverty or even moved away because of the despair of losing their only source of income. But anyway, he was determined to find out what happened to them and to eventually find them and then compensate them for his mistake. Not for his mistake, for him carrying out the callous order that his master had ordered him to do. Anyway, so he walks up to the house, he knocks on the door, and a man opens up the door. He's very well dressed, he has very kind eyes. He looks modest, but you can tell that they have money. And so he politely inquires, please, there was a cottage here that housed a peasant man, his wife and his son. I'm looking for them. I had met them a few years ago and I just wanted to see how they are going on, but I can't find their cottage anywhere. This man immediately smiled and his eyes just lit up with excitement. And at that moment, this trusted servant realized that this was the same man, the peasant man, who had somehow become wealthy. They were so happy to see each other, they hugged each other, and then the servant asked this guy, Manze, what happened? Okay, I'm so sorry. It's been so long since we passed by since you hosted us all those years back. What happened? How come you become this wealthy? And the man said, can you imagine? The day you guys left, we just lost our cow. We don't know what happened to it. Like, it just disappeared. Now you see, we had to start getting creative. We had depended on that cow for so long. Now we had to think out of the box because we had to provide for ourselves. One thing led to another, one creative idea led to another, and here we are. We found ourselves building something that we didn't think we could build because we were so comfortable with our cow. And we built our whole empire, and here we are today. The slave was so awed at this story. He was so amazed. And anyway, after they caught up for a bit, he had to rush back to his master's caravan before the master noticed that he was missing. And even as they continued on in the journey, the slave began to understand why his master had ordered him to throw the cow off the cliff. You see, the thing that this master had understood was that this peasant family was very comfortable with the little that they had. They took a lot of comfort in their cow. It was their comfort zone. As long as their cow gave milk, as long as they were able to buy the little provisions that they needed, then they were fine. They didn't have that opportunity to think out of the box because they were very comfortable within the box that they were in. And so the best thing he could do to repay this peasant for his hospitality was to give this peasant the little shove that he needed to actually think out of the box. And that is why he asked the slave to go back and throw the cow off the cliff. It seemed like a very bad thing to do at the time, but the servant began to understand that it was actually a blessing and a gift, the best gift that this master could give to these generous people who had hosted him all those years back. Now the question to you is, are you comfortable somewhere? Are you comfortable where you are? Have you refused to grow? Have you refused to think out of the box? If you are comfortable, it means that you are not growing. It's time for you to throw your cow off the cliff. Throw your cow off the cliff. With that short story, I hope I've managed to inspire a few of you into throwing your cow off the cliff. Step out of your comfort zone. Think out of the box. Your potential is so much more than where you are now. Okay? With that, I wish you a good rest of the day. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.